Okay, what we're going to take a look at now is implementing the refresh token feature in our application. And I'm on development mode and I'm running my app on localhost 3000 activities, and I'm logged in as a normal user, not the Facebook user. And we've got our normal token behavior where we're storing it in the local storage, and this has an expiry date, in my case, of 7 days. So this is what we want to mitigate. We want to reduce the amount of time that we give to this token to a much smaller amount. We'll just use a minute for testing, but then we'll increase it before we go ahead and publish. And the idea being that if somebody does leave their laptop in the coffee shop and forgets for whatever reason, then the token inside here will have a very short expiry. The refresh token that we issue them will have a much longer expiry, but they'll need to remain connected to our app to make use of the refresh token. So what we'll do is we'll head back to VS Code, and the first thing we'll do is we'll just check out a new branch for refresh tokens. And I'm currently on the main branch, and what we'll do is say git checkout -b, and we'll call it refresh tokens, and press return. And now we're on our new branch, so we can commit these changes to GitHub in the safe knowledge that we're not going to deploy our application before we're ready to do so. So what we'll do first is we'll start with the domain. And each of our app users is going to have a collection of refresh tokens. And what we'll do is we'll create a new C# class called refresh token. And this is going to have several properties. And we'll give it an int of ID. And we'll relate it to our app user, so we'll say app user and app user. We'll give it a string of a token, and this will be the refresh token. We'll give it an expiry, so we'll say date time, and we'll need to bring this in from system, and we'll say expires, and we'll give it an initial value of date time. And we're going to use UTC dates for this, so we'll say UTC now and add days, and this is the one that we'll give a significant expiry to. So we're going to say add days and 7. That's fairly typical for a refresh token. And then what we'll do is add a boolean, and what we'll do, we'll say is expired, and instead of using a getter and a setter, we'll just calculate this and return the date time .utc now is greater than or equal to expires. And we'll add another property that's a date time, and we'll make this optional, and we'll say revoked. And this will be the date time that the token or the refresh token has been revoked. And then we'll add another boolean, and we'll say is active. And once again, we'll work out this information from what we have, and we'll say revoked equals null and not is expired. And then from those bits of information, if it's not revoked and it's not expired, then we know that the token is active, and we can use it to refresh the user's JWT. Now there's going to be a relationship between our refresh token and our app user, so we'll go to our app user class, and what we'll do is we'll say prop of iCollection, and we'll say refresh token, and we'll call it refresh tokens. And what we'll also do is we'll create a new list of refresh token. And this will save us, when we add a new token to a user, this will save us including the tokens list, because we'll have a list that we can add a token to. And what we'll do is we'll accept the default conventions for creating the migration. And the default is that if we delete our app user, it won't delete the refresh tokens table, but we're not allowing our users to delete their accounts, so I'm going to save a bit of time and not worrying about configuring this particular entity. So what we'll do, we'll just go to our API tab, make sure we stop our API server from running, and cd into the solution folder, and we'll create a new migration. And I'll say .NET EF migrations add, and I'll just call it refresh tokens. And we'll say -p for persistence, and -s and the API for our startup project, and just press return. And that should work without an issue. Now, if we go and take a look at the migration, and all our migrations, of course, now are for Postgres. We're not using SQLite at this stage of development. We have our Postgres development server that's up and running, and we can see that we have our new table being created. We've got our columns, and like I say, I'm not worrying about the delete behavior for this because I haven't implemented a feature that allows a user to delete their user account. But if I had, then I would also want to go and remove these refresh tokens as well for that user. So this is our entity configuration setup. What we'll take a look at next is our validation parameters and how we can generate a refresh token.